Gary Cooper was a major Hollywood actor who captivated audiences with his charisma, grace, and spectacular performances. He was courageous and truthful in every part he played, whether it was a cowboy, a soldier, or an everyday hero. He won an Oscar for his work in Sergeant York, and High Noon is still a classic. Then, something unexpected came to light not long ago. Cooper insisted on the destruction of a High Noon scenario. Does he have anything to hide? Behind the camera, what mysteries lay dormant? As we reveal the truth, stay tuned. Gary Cooper was a towering figure in Hollywood by the early 1950s, but he was experiencing a slump in his career. Some questioned if he was still a marketable actor after most of his recent films failed to meet expectations in terms of critical praise and box office success. Cooper was already dealing with a decline in his health on top of all these problems at work. In addition to stomach ulcers, he had sustained injuries on multiple shoots. After turning 50, he began to doubt his suitability for the starring part in High Noon, worried that he was looking too elderly. Cooper nevertheless agreed to play Marshall Will Kane in High Noon, despite his initial reluctance. The film's protagonist, a lawman, faces off against a gang of assassins on the noon train in this Fred Zinman production. Everything happens as it happens, elevating the viewing experience. Marshall Kane, played by Cooper, is a man struggling with feelings of responsibility and solitude. Because of his illness, he is more susceptible to physical harm when performing, which adds depth to his character. Upon its initial release, High Noon became an enormous financial success. Cooper took home the Oscar for Best Actor, one of 4 victories from the film's 7 nominations. Critics and audiences alike lauded his performance, hailing him as a future Hollywood A-lister. Famous cinema critic John Wayne had nothing but praise for High Noon. Even though he had previously spoken out against the film, he eventually accepted the Oscar in Cooper's honor, complimenting his friend's performance. Gary Cooper's tenacity and commitment to his profession are forever showcased in High Noon. Despite his deteriorating health and career, he continued to leave an indelible impression on film history with outstanding performances. However, a significant event occurred in Hollywood during the filming. During this period of political persecution and individual betrayal, a Hollywood blacklist was in full swing. In the midst of all these problems, Gary Cooper insisted on destroying this High Noon scene. In order to alter the storyline, Gary Cooper made sure to delete some parts from High Noon before it was released. Some sequences and subplots were cut because of the extensive editing that took place. Hadleyville was originally meant to be shown as a ghost town in both the opening and closing credits of the film. The intro was supposed to portray the town's gloomy future with its barren streets, crumbling buildings, and tumbleweeds. Later on, when the plot thickens, Hadleyville becomes a thriving town. Finally, it returned to its deserted condition, revealing the repercussions of the townies' lack of bravery. Based on Cooper's assessment that they could take attention away from the main plot, these sequences were ultimately deleted from High Noon before to its publication. By centering on Kane's suffering, the picture could heighten its emotional effect and intensity. Toby, another constable, was also involved in a separate plot in the original screenplay. The purpose of Toby's journey was to return a prisoner to Hadleyville. In 3 scenes, we see him accompany the prisoner on his journey, face obstacles along the way, and eventually reach town, maybe after the final gunfight. While filming was underway, the scenes were cut from the final product. In Cooper's and the other directors' opinions, the subplot would take focus away from the primary narrative and the events leading up to noon. In the saloon scene, a character says, "You don't have 2 deputies," which is a subtle nod to Toby. Here, Harv Pell claims he simply resigned. Due to the editing decisions that eliminated Toby's sequences, this remark that once referred to both Harvey Pell and Toby is now only a relic. Filmmakers opted to cut Toby's plot so they could put more emphasis on Kane's fight, exacerbating his seclusion and integrity. These decisions in editing helped transform High Noon into a character-driven drama, setting it apart from other westerns. The strong ties to the early 1950s political atmosphere were one of the reasons why Cooper's High Noon was a cinematic masterwork. Carl Foreman, the film's screenwriter, was a major player during the Hollywood blacklist period. Because of the industry's involvement with McCarthy's House Un-American Activities Committee, Carl Foreman's refusal to comply with the WAC that year led to his blacklisting, which in turn became a scandal. He was summoned by WAC because of accusations regarding his former ties to the Communist Party. High Noon was still being made at this period. His refusal to reveal other members' identities led to his label as an uncooperative witness and his blacklisting by Hollywood studios, even though he admitted to having been a member in the past. The production of the High Noon film was jeopardized, and this had an impact on his career and professional connections as well. Stanley Kramer, the film's producer, was worried about this and managed to get Foreman to sell his share in the company. Even though Foreman was still recognized as the film's screenwriter, he took his credit as an associate producer away. High Noon's storyline reflects Foreman's own struggle. An enraged bandit is closing in on the protagonist, Marshall Will Kane, Gary Cooper, and he is in grave peril. Despite the townspeople's best efforts to rally behind him, Kane is betrayed and made to stand alone in the face of danger. Foreman drew parallels between his real-life experiences and those of the film's protagonist, Wack, and felt that Hadleyville represented Hollywood. Many see this plot as an allegory for the McCarthy era, reflecting the persecution and isolation that individuals like him endured during that time. Meanwhile, Foreman was still blacklisted, so he had to move to Britain to continue his career, regardless of how critically acclaimed High Noon was. He worked on famous projects like the River Kwai Bridge while in exile, but his contributions went unrecognized due to his blacklist status. During a turbulent time in American cinema, High Noon shows the emotional and professional sacrifices that people made. The public frequently took notice of Cooper's intriguing childhood before he became a famous actor thanks to High Noon. Frank James Cooper, better known as Gary Cooper, came into this world in Helena, Montana on May 7, 1901. His parents, Charles Henry Cooper and Alice Brazier Cooper, were immigrants from England. He was the younger of their two sons. His dad was a famous Montana Supreme Court justice, rancher, and native of Houghton Regis, England. His mother was an Englishwoman from Gillingham. Approximately 50 miles north of Helena, on a 600-acre, 7-barn cattle ranch, was purchased by his father, Charles Cooper, in 1906. Ranch living, horseback riding, shooting, and fishing were common summer activities for Gary and his older brother Arthur. A British education was something his mother really advocated for. As a result, she brought him and his brothers to England in 1909. They attended Bedfordshire's Dunstable Grammar School. The lads spent their time at Houghton Regis with relatives of their father. Although Gary took Latin, French, and English history classes here, he was never a fan of the stuffy Eton collars. With his family's eventual return to the U.S. in 1912, he resumed his studies at Helena's Johnson Grammar School. Gary Cooper's life took a dramatic turn when he hurt his hip in a vehicle accident when he was 15 years old. After consulting with his doctor, he decided to live on the family ranch and ride horses to help him recover. His distinctive gait and unorthodox approach to horseback riding are both products of this therapy. He dropped out of school in 1918 to devote himself fully to his job as a ranch cowboy. Bozeman, Montana's Gallatin County was home to another high school that his dad got him into. An English teacher he met there pushed him to join the debate and theater groups. Then, in 1920, he took 3 painting classes at Bozeman's Montana Agricultural College while still a high school student. Charles Marion Russell, Frederick Remington, and other Western artists served as inspiration for this. Cooper continued his painting studies at Grinnell College by 1922. Cooper quit suddenly in February 1924 despite having a stellar academic record in serving as the Collegiate Yearbook's art editor. After establishing himself as an artist in Chicago, he relocated to Helena and began selling editorial cartoons to a nearby newspaper. Moving to Los Angeles later that year per his father's wishes, Gary took odd jobs for a while before reuniting with Montana pals who were in the film industry as stunt writers and extras. The start of his legendary acting career was this introduction to Hollywood. Although his Hollywood career took an unexpected turn, Gary Cooper eventually achieved great success. He followed his parents to Los Angeles in 1924, after graduating from Grinnell College. After realizing he had a gift for drawing, he initially planned to make a living as an artist. Unfortunately, he was never going to make it big in the art world due to how cutthroat it was. He made contact with several Montana pals who were involved in low-budget film production as extras and stunt writers when he was in Los Angeles. Because of his connections, he was able to work as a stunt writer for $10 per day and a film extra for $5 per day. His eagerness to do risky stunts and superb horsemanship made him an asset to the film crew. In spite of the dangers he faced on the job, Cooper was able to secure a stable income and break into the film industry. It was clear he had a natural talent for film presence from an early age. Others began to take note of his acting abilities, and he began to receive little roles. He played a disguised Cossack in one of his early famous appearances, in The Eagle. His acting chops were on display in this little role, which was his cinematic debut. Cooper tended to gravitate towards more meaningful acting parts since stunt work was a limited career option. He signed on casting director Nan Collins as his agent and spent money on a screen test. His agent advised him to go by Gary instead of Frank Cooper because the name was already in use by other actors. Impressed by Gary, Indiana, where she was born and raised. Under the alias Gary Cooper, he began to win more significant parts, which he enthusiastically embraced. Through grit and flexibility, Cooper went from being an ambitious artist to a successful actor in Hollywood. He had a stellar acting career that began with his time as a stuntman and extra, where he refined his craft and gained insight into the film business. Silent and early sound films propelled him to stardom in his early career. His magnetism shone through on television, and he became known as Hollywood's top Western hero. His moral and challenging roles brought him fame. Cooper landed a significant role in Henry King's silent Western Barbara Worth in 1926. Here he played the role of a resolute cowboy, Abe Lee. Cooper brought the Western characters to life with his performance. His career as a Hollywood Western hero was launched at this point. Cooper spearheaded the charge throughout the difficult transition from silent to sound filmmaking. In 1929, under Victor Fleming's direction, he made his significant sound film debut with The Virginian. In the film, Cooper portrayed the lead role of a conscientious and spare-spoken cowboy who faces a moral conundrum between a gang that rustles castles and his best buddy. His powerful vocals and spot-on acting made an impression on moviegoers. His commanding silent screen character was solidified by it. This statement, which symbolizes his on-screen demeanor, "If you want to call me that, smile," is also notable in the film. Thanks to these roles, Cooper became the go-to Western hero in Hollywood. American audiences connected with his portrayal of heroes because of the moral purity and tough individuality he personified. His talent for expressing nuanced feelings with less words. And he left an indelible mark on film with his convincing portrayal of the stereotypical American cowboy. He demonstrated his range and depth as an actor throughout his career, which was defined by critical praise and multiple Academy Awards. He played the lead role in Ernest Hemingway's 1932 film adaptation of his novel A Farewell to Arms. A huge number of people enjoyed the movie. Despite criticism from the Catholic Church over its depiction of a love affair between a British nurse and an American ambulance driver during World War I, Cooper was well respected in Hollywood for his work. His 1936 performance in Mr. Deeds Goes to Town earned him a Best Actor nomination at the Academy Awards. In this Frank Capra-directed film, Cooper played the role of Longfellow Deeds, a man who left his tiny town for the big city after inheriting a huge fortune. Because of this, he became known as an all-American hero. After that, in 1941, for his role as Alvin York in Sergeant York, Cooper received his first Academy Award for Best Actor. York was one of the most decorated American troops of World War I, and Cooper's portrayal of the character brought him both critical praise and the esteemed Oscar. In these parts, Cooper proved once and for all that he was an actor capable of embodying a wide range of characters with nuance and realism. Before the High Noon incident made Gary Cooper demand the release of certain scenes, his personal life was characterized by scandals and conflicts stemming from intense romances. Cooper began an unhappy romance with Mexican actress Lupe Velez in 1929, while they were filming Wolfsong. Intense emotions and many public fights were typical of the relationship, particularly considering Velez's explosive personality. Their arguments frequently escalated into physical altercations, with Velez repeatedly attacking Cooper. Cooper suffered from severe weariness and substantial weight loss as a result of their extremely unstable relationship. In 1931, he finally ended their relationship due to the pressure from his mother. The scene where Velez shot and missed Cooper as he boarded a train to end their relationship was straight out of a movie. In an effort to establish a steady relationship, Cooper wed socialite Veronica Rocky Balfe in 1933. She brought harmony to Cooper's life as a former actress and debutante in New York. Maria, the couple's daughter, was born in 1937. Although they seemed to be a happy family on the outside, Cooper's extramarital activities put a strain on their marriages. He started an affair with Patricia Neal, his 21-year-old co-star on the set of The Fountainhead, in the late 1940s. Their tumultuous three-year romance was anything but. In 1951, Cooper and his wife briefly separated after she confronted him about their romance. Cooper refrained from seeking a divorce, even though he had already stated his love for Neil. There were major fallouts from the incident. After she became pregnant with his kid, Cooper arranged for her to undergo an abortion, as Neil later claimed. Neil ended the relationship in late 1951 due to the emotional strain and cultural constraints. Many scandals and Cooper's subsequent exile from the Hollywood industry were both stemming from his unstable personal life. There was a huge gulf between his complicated private life, full of drama and affairs, and his heroic on-screen character. A number of people were embroiled in political scandal, not only the High Noon screenwriter. Various political scandals involving Gary Cooper, particularly those that occurred during the McCarthy era, had an impact on his career. The conservative leanings belie the fact that Cooper has acted in films such as For Whom the Bell Tolls, which explores the Spanish Civil War and is based on Ernest Hemingway's novel. Although Cooper's status in Hollywood was unaffected by the film's anti-fascist themes, they were clear. Cooper was called upon to appear before the House Un-American Activities Committee in 1947, when the Red Scare was at its height. While serving as an amicable witness, he related stories of encounters with concepts he found highly anti-American, such as claims that the U.S. it was deemed superfluous to have Congress or that the Constitution was out of date. Cooper did not accuse anyone of being communist, but he did confess to turning down scripts that he thought had communist overtones. During this time, Cooper was also involved with Carl Foreman and High Noon. After Foreman was brought before the WAC for his membership in the Communist Party, Gary Cooper demanded the destruction of the High Noon scenes. Cooper backed Foreman, describing him as the best type of American, even if doing so would have cost him his career. Cooper and director Fred Zinman threatened to drop the movie unless Stanley Kramer and the producers acknowledged Foreman's contributions, even though Kramer tried to have his name removed from the writing credits. Therefore, he was still listed as the scriptwriter. At a later date, Foreman recognized Cooper's special assistance, saying that, compared to his contemporaries, Cooper was the only major one who made an effort to lend a hand. A common interpretation of High Noon's story is that it is a metaphor for the loneliness that many felt during the Red Scare, since it shows a lonely marshal who was deserted by his community. The conflict between individual convictions and one's professional obligations is illustrated by Cooper's defense of Foreman, which further complicates the complicated political climate in 1950s Hollywood. Various health issues that Gary Cooper encountered in the late 1940s and early 1950s had an impact on his personal life and professional career, particularly his time spent filming High Noon. Ulcers in his stomach, anemia, and jaundice were his ailments. For every illness that necessitated surgical procedures followed by recuperation times. His on-screen charisma, which he had once cultivated, began to wane as a result of these health problems. A string of financially disappointing films for Cooper added extra strain to his career at this time. Saratoga Trunk and Unconquered were two examples of films that bombed at the box office. Saratoga Trunk was a box office smash for Warner Brothers in 1946, but critics including the New York Times' Bosley Crowther were harsh in their assessments of Bradley Cooper's performance. Unconquered, Cecil B. DeMille's high-budget film, also bombed at the box office, adding fuel to the fire of the public's belief that Cooper's popularity is waning. His status in Hollywood was diminished as a result of all the health issues and professional losses. Someone in the public eye saw that his health was not right, and his once unwavering silence had softened. But as Marshall Will Kane in High Noon, 1952, Cooper gave an outstanding performance. Cooper was praised for his portrayal, which was seen as honest and profound, despite his continuous health problems and recent professional setbacks. He solidified his position as a Hollywood leading man with the role, which earned him his second Academy Award for Best Actor. High Noon gave Cooper a new lease of life and highlighted his unfaltering skill and determination despite setbacks.